Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to spend a few minutes talking about something that keeps coming up in this debate around LB89, but that I have not received or heard an answer about, and that's enforcement. Supporters of this bill keep saying that it's about setting expectations, that it's just about stating what the law is, what's common sense, what are people supposed to be doing, putting standards in place. But laws aren't suggestions or affirmations. They require enforcement. And if you're not willing to say how a bill like this will be enforced, then you shouldn't be pretending that it's harmless. Expectation of how people are going to act without enforcement is meaningless. It's just messaging. It's a political gesture. And in this case, it's a signal to your base, a talking point for the campaign trail, something designed to stoke more division and create more hostility among Nebraskans. And when we use legislation for messaging instead of good governance, we create serious unintended consequences for real people. So what happens when a student violates this so-called expectations? Oh, and another thing I'll say, all of this, one thing that's perplexed me through this whole year of LB89 being in the air is that it's ostensibly about concern for girls. But there are trans boys too, of course, and trans men, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of concern about their safety, from the people who are ostensibly just worried about what's happening to women. So that's perplexed me through this whole thing. But what happens, for example, when a trans boy who looks, lives, identifies like a boy, you look at him, you think it's a boy, uses the boys' restroom, and they were not assigned male at birth? Is he removed from school? Is he reported to the principal? Then what kind of obligation is that principal under? Are his parents under any obligation to disclose that their child was not assigned male at birth? Are teachers expected to stop him? Are other students expected to report him? Who are we empowering here to be the bully? Because right now the government is the bully, Senator Kauth is the bully, but under this bill, if it advances, if it passes, who then steps into that position to maintain the enforcement so that the bill is actually implemented? Is it the other kids who say, okay, well, now we got a green light from Senator Kauth to bully our trans classmate, so we're going to tattle and tell and make them feel unsafe. And then we do get into these issues around the mental health crisis that we have in our schools that our colleagues have either denied or brushed off or said, well, if trans kids don't want to have mental health crisis, they should just act like the sex they were assigned at birth. If trans kids want to play sports, they can play sports. They just have to play on the team of the sex they were assigned at birth. You guys can't be serious with that stuff. You can't be serious. If this body actually spelled out what enforcement looks like, ID checks, surveillance, discipline, I don't know what kind of genital detective behaviors you're envisioning, these reports based on physical appearance. One colleague said, well, a girl, you can tell when you look at them. We know that's not right. The cruelty of this bill would make it impossible to pass if you understood that. The cruelty of the bill is impossible to ignore. So instead, you avoid the question. You say it's just about common sense. It's just making things clear. I know a woman when I see it. But what's clear is this. Any attempt to enforce this law is violating people's privacy. It's violating their dignity and their autonomy, and it requires school staff to become gender police. It turns students into suspects. It encourages teachers to interrogate kids based on how they look, how they dress, what color their backpack is, how they walk, what the politics of their parents are, how they speak. You cannot enforce this law without causing harm to innocent people. And if your answer to that is, well, we trust schools to use their judgment, then what you're really doing is outsourcing the bullying. You're outsourcing the discrimination, and you're handing vague laws to local administrators who are not asking for this and daring them to figure out in real life what is between the legs of these children. It's perverted and disgusting, and it's not responsible governance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, colleagues, if you believe this law is needed, you should be able to explain how it's going to be enforced, what enforcement actually looks like in practice. If you can't explain that, then you don't get to say that it's harmless or benign, because every law has a consequence, every policy has an impact, and if this bill passes, it will not just sit on the books as a symbolic gesture of what we think women are and who we think is worthy of protection. It will be used. It will be enforced, and it may be enforced in a way that actually disgusts you. It may be enforced in a way that is more invasive and perverse and violating than you realize. It will be used to single out children who look different or act different, many of them who aren't trans. It will be used to humiliate students. It will be used to create a climate of fear in our schools. And every time a teacher or a student or a principal is forced to make a decision about who belongs where, if boys are on this side and girls are on this side, who's going where, what team, what bathroom, somebody will be harmed. And that harm is on us. We will be responsible for causing that. So no, you don't get to say this bill is harmless if you can't explain how it's going to be enforced. Those expectations come with consequences, and the consequences fall upon the most vulnerable kids in our schools. And this is very few kids. And they are minding their business. They are not harassing people. And again, it's preposterous and ridiculous that that point even has to be made. I also want to speak to something we all say we care about in this chamber, which is the mental health of our young people. We are in a full-blown youth mental health crisis, and that's not rhetoric, it's a public health fact. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death for teenagers in Nebraska. Rates of depression, anxiety, and self-harm are much higher than any of us want. And these issues are especially difficult and pronounced for queer youth and for girls. And these are students who are already navigating identity, insecurity, and pressure in a world that often tells them that they are not enough and that they don't belong. Now, imagine trying to navigate all of that while your state legislature debates whether you're even allowed to exist. And the adults in the room behind me will say, oh, no one is saying they can't exist. We're just saying we want to see what their pee-pee looks like. Do you understand the indignity and the humiliation of what this bill is actually saying in practice? We cannot pretend that this is separate from the mental health crisis that kids are facing. Teens, kids in their 20s. It is the crisis. The crisis is the continued creep of government into people's business, between their legs, controlling what they can and can't do with their bodies. It seems to me like this theme of your body doesn't belong to you. Your body doesn't belong to you is a major theme of politics today, and certainly this legislature in the last several years. Your body doesn't belong to you is a major theme in thinking and philosophy in the United States today. And this underpins so much from abortion to forcing kids to hug their relatives and say they love them, forcing trans people and queer people to show up certain ways in certain spaces. We're saying that your body belongs to the state, or it belongs to God, or it belongs to your husband, or your boss, or your doctor, or your teacher, or your state senator. Your body doesn't belong to you. But of course, we do say that taking care of your body is your responsibility and your responsibility alone, and if you get sick or make a mistake, then nothing is going to be there to help you. So we cannot pretend that LB89 is separate from the mental health crisis and the public health crisis that we're facing in this country. It is part of the crisis. Because when kids hear adults in power say that they don't belong, and let me tell you, trans people and kids, queer, trans, gender nonconforming, curious, you do belong. You belong everywhere that everyone in this room belongs, including the bathroom. But when kids are impressionable and they hear from adults that they're supposed to trust, that they don't belong, they believe them. When they see bills like LB89 advance, bills that define them, their personhood as disruptive or dangerous. We've heard the word dangerous so many times. They internalize that message. They carry that message into their classrooms, into their jobs, into their homes, into their private lives, their diaries. And for many of them, it breaks something in them that cannot be easily repaired. Many of us in this body know people who have been broken by Senator Kauth and the actions of this body. These are not hypotheticals. These are real kids in our schools, in our states, who are brilliant, thoughtful, creative young people who are doing everything we ask of them. They're showing up, learning, trying to be themselves in a world, in a state that hasn't made room for that yet. And instead of supporting and listening to them, we call them dangerous and punish them. This is a betrayal of our role as leaders. What kind of example are we setting when the adults in the room respond to children in crisis with exclusion instead of compassion? What do we think happens when we propose laws that target their very existence and then act surprised when those kids fall into despair? We say, hope your parents have health care so you can go to the doctor and take a pill for it. It's not sustainable. It's not a way to run a culture or a society. I don't believe in it. If you are not helping kids, you are hurting them. There's no neutral ground here. So let's stop pretending that bills like LB89 are about safety or standards or rules, or definitely not common sense. If it was about common sense, we would be listening to educators, to mental health professionals, to experts, to doctors, and they're all telling us the same thing. That biology is not binary, that kids are in a mental health crisis, and that this kind of legislation causes measurable harm. It isolates the people who are already isolated. It punishes people who are already vulnerable. And it tells every young person that there's something wrong with them simply for being who they are, if they aren't cisgender and straight. And that's not public service, that's cruelty. Colleagues, we should be doing everything in our power to make life better for Nebraska's youth. That means investing in school counselors and making sure that kids can get a well-funded, quality public education accessible to everybody, not surveilling them in the bathroom. It means providing safe spaces, which is, I know what you think you're doing, but not at the expense of labeling kids as threats. In this hearing for this bill, which went until midnight, we had adults come in, and I've been talking a lot about kids, but of course adults would be affected by this bill too in state buildings. If a person is in a bathroom and they are perceived by someone like Senator Kauth to be in the wrong bathroom, then Senator Kauth might go tell a police officer and cause some kind of, like intervention, some conflict to occur. Because someone like Senator Kauth would be so scared of who else is in the bathroom with her. And that's just not a type of fear that I relate to. If you're afraid of assault in a bathroom, that's already illegal. That's a different problem. But trans people are just trying to pee. I can assure you of that. Anyway, I was talking about the hearing. Hearing went till midnight. We had I guess I don't want to misspeak. I think we had an hour of proponent testifiers, maybe 2 hours, much of it invited testimony. And then we had for the rest of the night opponent testimony. And a lot of those testifiers were former military, veterans, former teachers, healthcare workers, talking about how they don't fit the gender norm in some way. We heard from several cisgender women, women who identify as women, who were born as women, who have short hair, who are very tall, who are muscular. And they talk about how they have been in bathrooms at times as adult women and been accosted because someone in the bathroom, like Senator Kauth, thought they didn't belong there and got scared for no reason. And that's exactly the type of culture that LB89 contributes to. It's pitting people against each other, where before there was no conflict at all. It's inventing a crisis when what we need to be doing is trusting each other and minding our business, not controlling each other's bodies, policing what we think is between people's legs. All I ask is that you wash your hands. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. One thing I was thinking about on my drive-in this morning is every morning, so I was thinking about the Pope. Every morning we come in and somebody prays over us, somebody leads us in prayer. And in those prayers, the person usually asks to give us guidance from God, from Christ, from your conscience to do what's right. But every single day, I watch people in this body fail on purpose. And yeah, I know we're all imperfect and God doesn't expect us to be perfect, and that's part of the belief and stuff like that. But to willfully fail over and over and over to protect innocent people, do you ever think about that? Do you ever think about that when you're standing in here during the prayer with your head bowed, and then you know that at 7 p.m. you're going to vote to take rights away from trans people in Nebraska? The dissonance of that from what your faith actually teaches to how you actually live it. You pray to be guided by Christ's teachings, and it's always Christ. It's never, some non-denominational religious thing. It's always Jesus Christ of Nazareth. You pray to be guided by his teachings, and then you come in here and you vote to do harm. You invoke the name of God, and then you use your power to judge others. You say you're Christians, but then you vote for bills like LB89. So let me remind you what Jesus said. Well, let me remind you what Pope Francis said, actually. I know many of you are Catholic. I have the number and a roster in my desk because it's in the roster. But the Pope, a man who dedicated his life to Christ's teachings and who Catholics believe to be infallible, mind you, these are things that he said about laws like LB89 and the people they target. Pope Francis said, individuals must be accompanied as Jesus accompanies them, in the context of talking about trans people. He said, no one should feel cast out of the church because any rejection comes from the people in the church, not from God. He said that in Christianity and Catholicism, the rejection of trans people, it comes from people. That does not come from God. So if you're trying to reflect the will of God and the spirit of your Savior, rejecting trans people is not part of that. That's another human error that you're making. He said, we are all children of God. God loves us for who we are and for the strength with which each of us fights for our dignity. Through his entire papacy, and when he was a cardinal before that, he remained in touch with this convent. I'm trying to think of the word the nuns are. This convent that was a mission for transgender nuns, for transgender women, and he would write letters to the woman who ran the convent and ask how the girls are doing. He was affirming trans identity even as a cardinal, even as the Pope. This is the model of Christian leadership that inspires me. And it should inspire you too, because it's rooted in love instead of power and judgment. It's about mercy. It's not about punishment. I don't lobby any of you on these kinds of issues anymore. Sometimes people in the lobby say, oh, did you talk to Werdekemper? Did you talk to Reapy? Did you talk to Hughes and Brandt? The people who are perceived to be, moderate, fair-minded folks in here. And I can't do that. I can't beg my colleagues to see people's humanity. Because if you need to be persuaded, if you need to be convinced to treat trans people with basic dignity, to protect their safety, to let them peacefully exist and go to school, then nothing I say will change your mind. So I don't beg people to respect the rights of others anymore. I don't plead with lawmakers to treat kids like human beings, because it's a matter of principle. And if you vote yes on this bill, you are saying that you are the right person to cast judgment on these kids, on someone else's life. But every morning with what you pray, you're saying the opposite. Jesus did not ask you to be the arbiter of gender identity. He did not ask you to separate the unworthy from the worthy. In fact, he said the opposite. He said, "The last shall be first." He said, "Let the little children come to me." He spent his ministry among the outcasts, not among the lawmakers. So you can think what you want, but it's all written in the book.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, colleagues, if you don't want to look to Scripture, you can look to the Constitution. You can look to the framing documents of this country, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. Look to the principles that we are supposed to be driven by in our service here: liberty, equal protection, privacy, the right to live free from government interference in your privacy and your body and your identity. There is no public good addressed by this bill. There's no measurable improvement in safety, no benefit to schools, no policy win. This bill doesn't create prosperity. It doesn't protect anyone. The only reason to support a bill like LB89, provided that you're not ignorant, assuming that you're not just so uninformed and you're not listening to these 4 hours of debate and you haven't learned anything at all, the only reason to support a bill like this is to be nasty, to be an absolute certified straight up hater. Because trans kids are not hurting anyone. Trans adults who want to use a bathroom in a government building, whatever, are not hurting anyone. They're just living. They're just trying to make it through the school day. And what this bill does is that makes it harder, more humiliating, more dangerous. Pope Francis met with transgender people. He embraced them. He called them by their names. And yes, he used their pronouns. He wrote letters to nuns who sheltered them and referred to the trans women in those convents as, quote, "the girls you care for." He invited those nuns to the Vatican. He made space for them at the Vatican. Do you think that the Pope, who once again I'll remind you, you believe is infallible, was wrong to allow transgender nuns to use the restroom at the Vatican? And if the Pope can do that, the leader of the Catholic Church can set aside judgment and choose mercy, what is stopping you from doing that? What's stopping you? You like being nasty. You like being mean and cruel. And you think that you are the one who is the right person to cast judgment on children. Who are you to say that your discomfort is worth more than someone else's dignity? Who are you to use the state to tell somebody that they are wrong about who they are? You do not have that right. And if you believe in the teachings of Christ, you don't even have that responsibility. That is not your business and it's not your problem. They'll sort it out at the end in the pearly gates. And I like to believe what the Pope said too, that I hope you're all up there and that hell is empty. We all want students to feel safe, but safety isn't the same thing as discomfort, and discomfort isn't the same thing as danger. Trans kids existing in a bathroom don't hurt anybody, but forcing them out, singling them out, humiliating them does cause real harm. What this bill does is it asks us to legislate someone's identity just because people feel uneasy. And that's not protection, that's oppression. The solution to that type of feeling is the opposite of bills like this. It's more exposure, it's getting out of your little bubble in the world, it's meeting different kinds of people, and realizing that we are not a threat to each other. If our definition of safety means making someone else less safe, then that's not safety. It's discrimination in disguise. We don't write laws to make one group feel comfortable by pushing another group out. And again, a very, very small group of people. I want to respond to a justification that I've heard over and over again for LB89, and it's one that sounds compassionate on the surface. I get it. It's the idea that this bill is necessary because cisgender women and girls feel unsafe sharing locker rooms or restrooms with trans people. I hear that. I believe that people can genuinely feel uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger, and feeling uneasy is not the same thing as being at risk. And proportionally, it does not warrant a bill like LB89, which increases bullying, which legislates existence, and makes it harder for people who are just trying to get through their day. It's not proportional. Because someone is uncomfortable doesn't mean that we need a bill like LB89. This bill is asking us to treat one group's discomfort as a valid reason to create real, tangible harm for another group. It's saying that because someone might feel uneasy, another student, in this case a trans girl, or it could be a girl who just doesn't look sufficiently feminine, maybe looks like a bump in their throat, maybe a little flat-chested, maybe short haircut, maybe very tall, maybe very muscular. It's saying that that person should be humiliated, excluded, and put in danger. I asked Senator Kauth during the hearing of her bill, we've been in the bathroom before, right? Yes. Together, yes. How do you know that I don't have a penis? You don't know that. And she acknowledged, she said, no, I don't know that. You guys, she didn't know me growing up. She doesn't know what sport team I played on in middle school. She doesn't know if I transitioned in 4th grade. She could do a deep Google dive and find that out. But this belies the entire point. You're legislating stuff that you don't understand. She herself conceded and admitted that she does not know. What this bill would ask is that we self-police, that if I have a penis, I go use the men's room. So let me know how all of you would like that. And if there is someone who any of you think don't belong in the bathroom that you're in, that then you're empowered to report that. And then that's what we're teaching our kids to do who are in school. This is such a step backwards socially, intellectually, societally, culturally. It's embarrassing. We're not legislating based on evidence. We're legislating based on vibes. Someone seem masculine or feminine. We're choosing fear over facts because the facts are there is no data, none, showing that trans people in restrooms increase danger to cisgender people. But there is data showing that trans students face higher rates of harassment, violence, and suicide when they are excluded or forced into the wrong places. So if you're truly concerned about student safety, then trans kids should be at the center of your concern. Here's what happens when a trans student is told they can't use the restroom with their peers. They hold it all day. They don't pee. They avoid eating. They avoid drinking. They stay home from school. They get bullied more. They shut down. And sometimes they don't make it through that pain. And meanwhile, this bill gives cisgender students the message that their discomfort is not only valid, it's enforceable. That if you feel weird around someone, you can report it. In my day, if you felt weird around someone, you write about it in your diary and get over it. But now we've got this government state mechanism in place where kids can go reporting each other for what they think is between their classmates' legs. You can humiliate them. You can call them out and send them away, even if they're not trans. We know this will affect people who aren't trans. What does this teach our kids? It teaches them that inclusion is optional, that somebody else's identity is up for debate, that other people are who you say they are, not who they say they are. And that if somebody makes you uncomfortable, you get to erase them. But that's not how we make schools safer. That's how we teach students to judge and stereotype and ostracize each other. You don't have to understand someone's experience to respect it. This is something that my dad actually struggled with for a long time. You know, he would agree if he heard me say that. You know, for a long time he would say, you know, I love you, but I don't get it. And that's fine. You don't have to get it. You just have to love the person anyway. Maybe you'll get there someday, but as long as you love the person and you don't come to them with judgment, that's fine. You don't have to feel comfortable around someone. You don't have to, quote unquote, get it to treat somebody with dignity. And your personal discomfort should never be a reason to legislate away somebody's rights, dignity, and liberty. Who are we to say, who are we to judge, and who are you to say that your discomfort is worth more than someone's life, someone's dignity? Thank you, Mr. President.